Her Bak, end of chapter 10. One thing still troubles me, said Her Bak on the way down from the peak. Why are the netters sometimes shown with an animal head on a human body, sometimes with an animal symbol on a human head, and some of them by the animal itself? Recollect that the animal is a psychically quickened body that is part of earth. Man is a spiritually quickened animal and part of cosmic man. That's why the 5-pointed star is his symbol. The head is the sum of the body, animal head on human body, even if it's the image of a netter, indicates a functional human principle. Cosmic, therefore, because man is the sum of the universe, but incomplete and only part of the human totality, since it is limited to the functional consciousness or quality shown by the animal's head. If the whole body is animal, it is intended to depict a purely animal and therefore terrestrial function, because the human being, microcosm, may, if he receives the supreme quickening, become a whole, whereas an animal body signifies no more than a stabilized condition in the becoming of organic consciousness. A symbol placed on a human head, like a crown, means accomplishment, as coronation does. It shows the quality of the man's or the netter's nature or of the state reached. What do you think you've gained by this lesson? The sage asked. The whole scheme of the world of causes, Her Bak replied, in its relation with earth. No, you have the connection of the four most important celestial cycles with the creative principles and functions of nature. What will you make of it? I shall be able to study the netters now I know in which cycle and which branch they work. Exactly. And deep enough to get some light on the universal harmony, which is more than those who taught you hitherto could do. There is an image of Nekebet, mistress of the south. But I still haven't given you, nor shall I give you now, the secret plan showing the connections and interplay of these principles, no longer in symbol and approximation, but with precision and in reality. This plan unveils the inevitable development of our destiny. Knowledge of it is what gives us stability. It is this that has led us to foresee and adapt ourselves to each epoch, having the wisdom to abandon the values of a time that has passed and pick out the constituents of the future. An environment must be suited to the age and men to their environment. Through this, we have chosen correctly, in accordance with their innate gifts, an extraordinary number of technicians and craftsmen, and we have been able to maintain a nucleus of those initiated in secret techniques and to link two thriving epochs. This excited Her Bak. He tried to get light on it. Master, may I know whether this marvellous plan has always remained a secret? Every secret should be open to discovery. The ancients kept this one well. Imagine, if you can, the design of a house built in many stages, whose elusive simplicity hides a trap at every step. Imagine false doors, secret entrances, a crypt from which each exit is an ambush, deceptive staircases, labyrinthine passages. If heaven doesn't put the guiding thread in your hands, you'll never discover the plan of it. Is silence a sufficient condition for getting it? First, prove your aptitude for research. Listen attentively to this, Her Bak. Few, indeed, are they who have full knowledge of it, but all who proved capable of it, disciples of Thoth, astronomers, craftsmen, have been given what was necessary for their particular training. Now, you know what the secret consists in. It is for you and you only to know more of it, in part or in whole, if this is your wish. Osiris has such a high place among the gods, said Her Bak next day, that I've been surprised at your silence regarding him. Osiris, the sage replied, is netter of the natural order. His story is the story of all creatures on earth, but his part is so complex that it can't be explained in a table showing the hierarchy of the netters. To know him, you would have to study all his names, functions and attributes, which would amount to the whole of natural science. Without going wrong, you can't isolate him from Seth, Isis and Nephthys, agents of becoming and the cycles of nature. He proceeds from Geb and Nut, the netter principles of earth and the sky that holds the stars. Yet, one doesn't say that Osiris is Nut's heir, rather that he is heir to the throne of Geb. His kingdom is that of earth and the forms of existence that depend on it. As Nut's son, he also exercises his functions among stars that are in relation with earth rhythms, the moon, the planets that are his dwellings, the indefatigables or circumpolar stars that never leave our sky. He is netter of Sar Orion and all the stars. He gives Ra his terrestrial body. If you would understand the four principles that proceed from Geb and Nut, you must study them in their mutual relationships, which will show you some crossings in nature which they explain. I can't now give you in detail the factors and functions that are at work in such crossings. It would call for a treatise on natural philosophy, but I will point out the facts essential for the fathoming of their significance. There is a relation of nature between Osiris and Isis, as indicated by her seat, which is part of his name. There is also a relation between Seth and Nephthys, as shown by the names Nebti, one of Seth's names, and Nebhet, or Nephthys. Isis is a terrestrial aspect of Osiris when he is, quote, the new water, unquote, tears and, quote, the water of regeneration, unquote, when he appears in his terrestrial aspect. Likewise, in relation to Seth, she is light and life, and all that frees from his bonds. If Osiris begets with Isis a posthumous son Horus, he begets Anubis with Nephthys. In the Duat, Osiris plays a triple role. In Genesis, he is the black sun. In the shadow world, he is the principle of perpetuity, witness as to what merits survival before the tribunal of life or death, on which his 42 assessors are the judges. He is the basis of the Salis, whose metamorphosis and renaissances he decides. The drama of Osiris is the prototype of the drama of the human Ka. In the vicissitudes of incarnation, the growth of consciousness throughout its terrestrial phases, the achievement of human royalty. Indeed, it is our cardinal revelation, leading up, as it does, to the appearance of the Redeemer. The Osiris myth falls into three parts. First, the earthly reign of the divine pair, Osiris Isis, initiators of human consciousness as regards natural law and changes in matter. This has been called the, quote, historic reign, unquote, of Osiris precedent to the reigns of our human kings, and this aspect of Osiris is still the pattern for the role of Pharaoh. Second, his passion, in which his earth form is destroyed and the spiritual seed of Horus results. For there is in Osiris the seed of Horus that in our myth the kite Isis draws from his passive phallus, dead and spiritually recreated. Note that it is after the slaying of mortal Osiris and the destruction of his component parts that Isis can recreate his indestructible body and take the Horus essence from it. This Horus will be set apart and brought up in secret until the day when he is to, quote, reveal his father's face, unquote, his own divine essence. Here is the terrestrial legend of Horus which follows that of Osiris. For after the destruction of his mortal body, Osiris is reborn again in all earthly creatures, to die in them and descend into the lower duat, with promise of regeneration, while Horus, son of Isis by Osiris, spiritual seed, avenges his father's bodily death by, quote, revealing his face, unquote, and attacking the Sethian enemy in all his earthly forms. Then he comes forth crowned by Geb's order and takes up the government of the two banks, unites the power of his father Osiris, master of the east, then of the west. But this is still only the legend of terrestrial Horus that precludes the legend of Horus Redeemer. Then comes the resurrection of Osiris, who symbolises, in nature, the re-quickening of earth and the buried seed, and the spiritual fact, reunion of the soul with the Osirian body, purified, indestructible. Her Bak showed astonishment that, to begin with, Isis and Osiris were only represented by the knot tit and the column djed. In the simplicity of those early days, said the sage, knowledge was given through essential symbols. Images were limited to what was strictly necessary. The first phase of our history had to show principles, creative numbers, ideal forms, and cosmic functions entering into the work of nature. This phase was necessarily theocratic. It was indispensable to assure the symbolic development of reigns and teaching, in exact conformity with the character of the time, and this could only be achieved with the collaboration of an instructed elite, inevitably a small number. The progressive development of the teaching had to follow the progressive complexity of nature in order to bring about the realization of the idea of a royal earthly man, of whom our later kings will be the image. Such a programme assumed a gradual extension of the royal prerogatives, first to an elite, then little by little to the lowest ranks of the social scale, in proportion to the estimated advance in human consciousness. All this corresponds with the involution of Osiris and the subsequent evolution of his consciousness throughout nature by the experience of numerous incarnations with their alternate victories and disasters, light and confusion. His name was openly spoken in the age corresponding with his realization in humanity. Having been the, quote, first of the Westerns, unquote, he had to instruct men in the possibility of regeneration. Isis was the great redeemer in this mystery. But her part is as hard to understand as that of Osiris. Don't forget, she is sister to Osiris and Seth, and partakes the nature of both. She is Aset, or Set, who by her dual nature favours Seth in some cases and in others triumphs over him by giving birth to Horus. Natural magicians who can take all forms, incarnate all functions as maternal principle, she causes the fall of spirit into matter and forwards resurrection with her regenerative tears. As Sopdit, she is provider of life. As Hathor, she is introducer of the dead and their mediatrix. She is the celestial swallow that peoples earth's nests, and with Osiris she governs the voyage between heaven and earth. Study all her names, and you will learn the relations of earth with heaven. But if you would know the secret principles of Osiris and Isis, go back to the primitive symbols, the Djed, his true body, and her mysterious knot. Master, allow one more question. What is the difference between Ammon, quote, of whom all creatures constitute the Ka, unquote, and Osiris, who is the netter of all terrestrial life? Osiris is the netter of nature, born of earth and heaven. Ammon is celestial and is never born.